Namaste and welcome to the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston and our Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna class. So I'll begin with the chant as always. Om Sarva Jiva Papanasha Karanam Bhaveshwaram Swikritang Cha Garbhavasa Deha Pashamidrisham Ya pitam swalilaya cha yena divya jivanam Ya pitam swalilaya cha yena divya jivanam Tannamami deva deva Ramakrishna Ishwaram Om Shri Vivekanandari Satchishya Supujitaya Shri Sharada Devya Virata Sevitaya Shri Ramakrishna Paramahamsaya Avatara Virishtaya Chate Namaha Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Shrimadattatam Bhuvi Grinanti Ye Bhurida Jana. So we are now on chapter 9, according to the New York edition of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the English translation. And it's a chapter entitled Advice to the Brahmos, the members of the Brahmo Samaj. And we are at the beginning of the chapter in the New York edition on page 198 at the top. So this is Saturday, April 7th, 1883. So April 7th means by this time Bengal is getting quite hot. Sri Ramakrishna was visiting Balaram in Calcutta with Narendra, Bhavanath, Rakal, M, and others. Balaram, at the master's bidding, often said to him, "Feed them now and then. That will confer on you the merit of feeding holy men." The master looked on his young disciples, yet untouched by woman and gold, as veritable embodiments of God. So again, he's visiting Balaram at Balaram's residence in Baranagar, and that was a place where Sri Ramakrishna went many, many times. It was he considered it his home in Calcutta. And Balaram was a great devotee from a Vaishnava background and was known as very miserly, though he was very wealthy. But it was under the influence of Sri Ramakrishna that his heart opened up and he became much more generous. And so Sri Ramakrishna told him to feed the devotees, those who, when Sri Ramakrishna would come, to invite others and to feed them, because that would give him merit. That, of course, is an ancient idea in India, that through feeding holy people, one attains to merit. That it, of course, attains to merit that can be understood in two ways. One way, we don't want to understand it in the life of Sri Ramakrishna, and that is to do an action so that you get merit, so that you have have the good things of life and so forth. No, he didn't mean it in that way, that merit is a thing to be collected because it'll bring good things to you. No, but merit in the sense of good karma. It purifies the mind, it purifies the body. It leads one on the path of devotion. So merit in that sense, in the sense that it brings spiritual good. It would bring spiritual good to Balaram. The narrator continues. A few days earlier, Sri Ramakrishna had been to Keshav's house with Narendra and Rakal to see a performance of the play entitled Navavrindavan. Narendra had taken part in the performance in which Keshav had played the role of Pauhari Baba. So that's interesting that Pauhari Baba had a part in this play, or Keshav played the part of Pauhari Baba, because Pauhari Baba was still alive. He was a great holy man who lived in Ghazipur near Benares. And Sri Ramakrishna and he never met. But Swamiji, after Sri Ramakrishna's passing away, went and visited him. In fact, even thought of taking initiation from him, but then was dissuaded. But he used to say that after Sri Ramakrishna, Pauhari Baba was the greatest spiritual light he had ever seen. And that was at a time when there were many great spiritual people in India, and he had seen a number of them. But he said there was no one comparable to Pauhari Baba except for Sri Ramakrishna. So in this play, Nava Vrindavan, the new Vrindavan, it means that was already referred to in the previous chapter when Sri Ramakrishna had seen it at Keshav's. And so the master says, Keshav came on the stage in the role of a holy man and sprinkled the water of peace. But I didn't like it. The idea of sprinkling such water on a theatrical stage after a performance. So this was something that struck Sri Ramakrishna as improper. Of course, to play the holy man, he was playing Pauhari Baba, that Sri Ramakrishna would have approved of. As we'll see in a moment, he didn't approve of playing wicked parts in plays, but he would have approved of Keshav playing the part of a holy man, but somehow the idea of sprinkling holy water on a theatrical stage, that he didn't like. Then Sri Ramakrishna continues, another gentleman played the part of sin. That is not good either. One should not commit sin, one should not even feign it. So that was something that Sri Ramakrishna was very strong on, that whatever you pretend, that leaves a mark on you. If you pretend to be something, if you pretend to do something, then it leaves a mark on you. And so he said that one should not even play the part of a bad character in a play. Now, as I mentioned last class, that would destroy drama, theater, the movie industry, and everything if all actors and actresses took that up seriously. So first of all, we don't have to worry that all are going to take it up, because it's like the fear people have when they see someone renouncing the world and becoming a monk or a nun. They say, well, if everybody in the world became a monk or a nun, what would happen to society? We don't have to worry about that. Never in the history of the world, in the past, nor in the future, is it going to be that everyone is going to renounce the world. So if somebody renounces the world, we can just relax and not think that the world is coming to an end. And so Sri Ramakrishna was speaking to sincere spiritual aspirants, that when you become a sincere spiritual aspirant, then you have to be more careful than before, because you realize that everything I do, everything I say, it makes a mark in my mind. And I don't want to do or to say things that are going to have a bad influence on me. I want to do that which is going to lead me forward. So, of course, ordinary actors, even great actors, I don't mean ordinary in the sense that they're not good actors, but ordinary people who are actors, good or middling, they're not worried about that. But if we become a spiritual aspirant, so Sri Ramakrishna isn't saying that nobody should play the part of an evil character, because then, of course, the drama itself would disappear. But that one who is following a spiritual path, we have to be very careful what we do, what we say, how we act, and even what we pretend to be. The opposite also is true. Sri Ramakrishna tells the story, which is pertinent here because it's just the opposite. He tells of the thief who, after a robbery, he was trying to escape the police. So he donned the garb of a holy man and sat on the side of the road pretending to meditate. And then people seeing the holy man, the supposed holy man, the pretend holy man sitting there meditating, they took him for a real holy man. They began to come and make offerings and leave a rupee. Somebody would come and leave a blanket for him and things like that, or for some fruits, something like that. And the holy man, after some time pretending to be a holy man, he started thinking that, well, maybe I should be a holy man. And he actually became transformed through his pretend holiness. So that may be fanciful, but it's fanciful for the sake of a point. And it's not even so fanciful. I won't go into the story of the influence Pauhari Baba had on somebody where that actually happened. But even if we take it as fancy, it's a fancy for driving home a point that, as we say in American slang nowadays, fake it until you make it. Fake it until you make it. So fake being a holy person. We have to understand that in the proper way. That doesn't mean being hypocritical. It doesn't mean trying to convince others that I'm a holy person. That's hypocrisy, and Sri Ramakrishna would never support that. That was a bad thing. But fake it until you make it, there's a truth embedded in that, which is why people say it. And that is that if I pretend to be able to do something, I actually gradually come to that which I'm pretending to be. And so in the opposite way, as the case is here, if you pretend to be a bad person, then that leaves a mark on the mind. So the master wanted to hear Narendra sing. The young disciple was not feeling well, but at the master's earnest request, he sang to the accompaniment of the tanpura, "Sing, O bird, that nestles deep within my heart. Sing, O bird, that sits on the kalpa tree of Brahman. Sing God's everlasting praise." As we'll see, and I'll mention as we come to them, there's several songs coming up, and several of them are obviously Brahmo songs, Brahmo Samaj songs, and they show the influence of Christianity. This one only shows the influence of Christianity in the fact that it's addressed to the formless Brahman. And so the Brahmo Samaj, they didn't accept the idea that God can incarnate, nor the idea that God can manifest in an image, so-called idol. That God is formless and God is infinite, so how can God appear in the form of a statue or an image of a deity? So all of their songs tended to be, or they're not tended, all of their songs were directed towards the formless aspect of God. And so this one is directed towards Brahman and sing God's everlasting praise. So then Narendra sang, "Brahman, joy of the whole universe, supreme effulgence, God beginningless, Lord of the world, the very life of life." So both the songs that Narendra sang, both of these songs, which only that much of the song is given here, are beautiful songs. I'm not criticizing the beauty of them. And Narendra, before he even came to Sri Ramakrishna, had deep spiritual sensitivity and an intense longing to realize God. He didn't get that from the Brahmo Samaj. In fact, I just read the other day in the Leela Prasanga, the life of Sri Ramakrishna, that Narendra used to avoid the meetings of the Brahmo Samaj on social reform because he was only interested in the spiritual side. And the Brahmo Samaj was very much engaged in social reform. So he used to avoid that side of the Brahmo Samaj because of his intense spiritual longing. That's what he was interested in. So, and again Narendra sang, "O King of Kings, reveal thyself to me. I crave thy mercy. Cast on me thy glance. At thy dear feet I dedicate my life, seared in the fiery furnace of this world. My heart, alas, is deeply stained with sin. Ensnared in Maya, I am all but dead. Compassionate Lord, revive my fainting soul with the life-giving nectar of thy grace." So that also is a beautiful song, but it shows again that it's a Brahmo Samaj song, and the fact that the Brahmo Samaj was heavily influenced by Christian theology. The Brahmo Samaj was an effort to find within Hinduism, within the Vedas and Upanishads and the Hindu tradition, something that would live up to what they thought were the correct intuitions of Christianity and Judaism. That is, that God is formless, God is infinite. There's that idol worship is evil. But also you see the influence here and Sri Ramakrishna used to refer to this sometimes. The emphasis on sin. My heart, alas, is deeply stained with sin. Ensnared in Maya, here, there's the Indian touch, but ensnared in sin, I am all but dead. Revive my fainting soul with thy life-giving nectar of thy grace. That is, that I am a sinner, I need your grace. So these are Christian sentiments. And again, that's fine within Christianity, but it was the influence of Christianity on the Brahmo Samaj. So it was not the typical ideas of a Hindu bhajan. Yes, a Hindu bhajan may pray for the grace of God, may weep for the lack of the vision of God, etc. But this idea of sin staining my soul, etc. And then even this, O King of Kings. You may find that idea sometimes in Hinduism, but it's a very rare idea. Yes, God is called Natha, Lord. He's called Prabhu, Lord, and other words like that, words that could also be used for a king. But more often, God in the Hindu tradition is Deva Deva, or such terms, the Deveshwara, such terms which mean the Lord of gods, the God of gods, not King of Kings, which is there, but a minor idea. That is, God was not usually worshipped as a king. The relationship to God was considered to be more intimate than that of a subject to his king. So Narendra continued another song. The whole song is given, and this is a beautiful song. Again, all of the songs are beautiful. I'm just pointing out the reason why they express the sentiments they do. This next song, which I'm about to read, was from Guru Nanak, a beautiful Sikh bhajan. The Sikh bhajans are wonderfully beautiful, both the Sikh music and the words of the bhajans. Swami Swahananda, whom many of you know, he was very good at imitating, and I can't do that, and I won't try to do it. But he was very good at imitating, and so he used to tell the story of traveling by train from starting in Bengal and going towards the Punjab. And in Bengal, everything, the language he would use would be very soft and sweet and everything. And as you pass through North India, they get more and more manly until the time you come to Punjab. It was a very manly style of speaking. But the same goes for bhajans. You go from the very sweet bhajans of Bengal, and when you get to the Punjab, the Sikh bhajans, yes, they're sweet, but there's a heroic tone to the Sikh bhajans, and you see the Sikh bhajan players playing with full strength and enthusiasm. So that I always think of when coming to Sikh bhajans. So Narendra continued singing, upon the tray of the sky blaze bright lamps of the sun and moon. So the sky is compared to a tray on which the lamps, as in Hindu arati, blaze the lamps of sun and moon. Like diamonds shine the glittering stars to deck thy wondrous form, that is the cosmic form of God. The sweet Malaya breeze blows soft, for fragrant incense smoke. That is, the sweet Malaya breeze blows like incense smoke. The moving air sways to and fro the fan before thy holy face. Like gleaming votive lights, the fresh and flowery groves of trees appear. How wonderful thy worship is, O slayer of birth and death. The sacred Om, from space arisen, is the resounding drum. My mind craves nectar day and night at Hari's lotus feet. O shower the waters of thy grace, O thirsty Nanak, blessed Lord. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, shower the waters of thy grace on thirsty Nanak, blessed Lord, and may thy hallowed name become his everlasting home. So beautiful, beautiful song. And here you see how the Sikh tradition nowadays the Sikhs consider themselves a separate religion, separate from Hinduism. But you see how close the Sikh spirit is, both in the hymns of Nanak and then the later gurus, and the words and sayings and deeds of Guru Gobind Singh, the last of the Sikh gurus. There's a deep harmony because they come from the same source. There's not a natural division between the two. Narendra sang again, in wisdom's firmament the moon of love is rising full, and love's flood tide in surging waves is flowing everywhere. O Lord, how full of bliss thou art, victory unto thee. So that was a song that Swamiji used to sing often to Sri Ramakrishna. Then at the master's bidding, Bhavanath sang. Bhavanath also, the devotee, a young devotee, had a beautiful voice. So Bhavanath sang, where is a friend like thee, O essence of mercy? Where is another friend like thee to stand by me through pain and pleasure? Who among all my friends forgives my failings, bringing me comfort for my grief, soothing my spirit in its terror? Thou art the helmsman who doth steer life's craft across the world's perilous sea. Thy grace alone it is, O Lord, that silences my raging passion storm. Thou pourest out the waters of peace upon my burning penitent soul, and thine is the bosom that will shelter me when every other friend I own deserts me in my dying hour. Narendra said to the master with a smile, referring to Bhavanath, he has given up fish and betel leaf. So fish and betel leaf, that of course, oftentimes when people turn very religious, then they give up both. Not all do, especially in Bengal. In Bengal, it's common even for Vaishnavas to eat fish. They may not eat the betel leaf, but they eat fish. In fact, it was said of Swami Swahananda's family, it was a very orthodox Vaishnava family. They were Goswamis in Bangladesh, what's now Bangladesh, at that time Bengal. That in their house, no onion or garlic was allowed in the house, but fish was allowed. That was that was okay. And I've seen in Velamat Swamis who won't eat onion or garlic, but they'll eat fish. So that is a Bengali custom. But here, Bhavanath, because he's become very devout, he's given up fish and betel leaf. Master, why so? What is the matter with fish and betel leaf? They aren't harmful. The renunciation of woman and gold is the true renunciation. So now, at this time, Narendra himself was a vegetarian. He wasn't at times in his life, including sometimes with Sri Ramakrishna. In fact, once he came to the Dakshineshwar temple, recorded here, and says, "Sir, I have eaten forbidden food." And Sri Ramakrishna said to him, "If one of these other boys had done that, I wouldn't be able to look at their face. But because in you the fire of knowledge blazes so bright, nothing will harm you." And he told Swamiji that when Narendra, that later you will have to travel and go to foreign countries, and there you will have to eat whatever is given. And so that Swamiji did. He was much criticized for it, but he did. But the idea here is that many people, when they become religious, the first thing they want to know is what should I eat and what should I not eat, as if that's the aim and purpose of religion. No. Rama and Krishna, they both hunted and they both ate meat. It's there in the Ramayana, it's there in the Mahabharata. Modern scholars who are against meat eating, they try to twist the words to say that, well, it doesn't really mean hunting and it doesn't really mean meat. It means they derive the Sanskrit words in a fanciful way in order to avoid what the words are actually saying. But Rama and Krishna, they both hunted, they both ate meat, and Jesus ate meat, the Buddha ate meat, he died eating pork. And so the idea is not to support meat eating. If one wants to be a vegetarian, that's good. Vegetarian food is good for the sattvic element of the mind. But that's not the main thing. If you eat vegetarian food and you cheat people and lie and hurt people, then what's the use of it? That's no use. Just making a show of, well, I've been a vegetarian since my birth. Well, who cares? Do you speak the truth? Are you honest? Are you a good person? Are you devoted to the spiritual path? Are you seeking the divine? Then it doesn't matter what you eat. If you want to be vegetarian, good. If you don't want to, that's fine. And so again, the idea here is not to say that those who are vegetarians should start eating fish. No, the idea is that don't put so much importance in such minor things. That's not where spirituality lies. So that's why in our tradition, the Ramakrishna tradition, we don't dictate what people should eat. Let people choose their diet according to their custom, their habit, and what they find to be good for them. The only thing we say is that if you find that something is disturbing you, then don't eat it. Eat that which is nourishing, that which is good, and that which you feel good about eating. Swamiji himself used to say that he thought with the spread of modern science, as science has spread, that more and more people would become vegetarian because he doesn't say why, he just says with the spread of science, vegetarianism also will spread. And that seems obvious to me that the reason is that people would discover that vegetarian food is better even from a health standpoint. But again, such things should not be made into the essence of religion. That's why Swamiji said that take religion out of the kitchen. He didn't mean that you shouldn't do everything religiously, including cooking and working in the kitchen, yes. But don't think that religion exists in the kitchen, and outside of the kitchen you can do whatever you want because you've eaten what you consider to be pure food. No. So then Sri Ramakrishna continues, where is Rakal, the future Swami Brahmananda, a devotee? He is asleep, sir. Again, this was Balaram Bose's house, and all of the young disciples became very much comfortable at Balaram's house. It became a second monastery, even in much later days after the founding of Belar Mutt. Many of the disciples, including Swami Brahmananda, Swami Adbhutananda, and others, would stay at Balaram's house even after Balaram had passed away, but in later days. So, he is asleep, sir, Master with a smile. Once a man went to a certain place to see a theatrical performance, carrying a mat under his arm. Hearing that it would be some time before the performance began, he spread the mat on the floor and fell asleep. When he woke up, it was all over. All laughed. Then he returned home with the mat under his arm. And that sort of thing has happened to some of us. I know for me, once I had not gotten sleep at night and I had to go on a trip. And so I went to the airport in Newburgh, New York. I was living at Ridgely Manor at that time and got to the gate early. There was almost nobody there, so I made myself comfortable as possible in one of the chairs, and I fell asleep. And when I woke up, the plane had come and gone, and all the passengers had gone. So that does happen, not just to Rakal. The narrator. Ram Dayal was very ill and lay in bed in another room. The master went there to inquire about him. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, some members of the Brahmo Samaj arrived. The master began to converse with them. Brahmo, sir, have you read the Panchadashi? Master, at first one should hear books like that and indulge in reasoning, but later on, and then he sings, Cherish my precious mother Shyama tenderly within, O mind. May you and I alone behold her, letting no one else intrude. One should hear the scriptures during the early stages of spiritual discipline. After attaining God, there is no lack of knowledge. Then the Divine Mother supplies it without fail. So that's a very important teaching of Sri Ramakrishna, and one that was he frequently made in different ways. He'll give some examples in a moment, but let me stop here first and say that he gives a place to a study of texts like the Panchadashi. He says that, yes, in the beginning, read and inquire, figure things out. But then later, when one has a deep hunger for the divine, then all of that falls away. So what's the principle that he is talking about, and what does it mean to us? That yes, as long as we want to figure things out, as long as we want to know what the path is and how to get there, what the nature of God is, what the self is, what my relationship to the world is, what the world itself is, then yes, such instructional texts have a place to give us a map of experience. A map of inner experience, a map of outer experience, a map of how to get to realization, etc. That has an important place, because without knowing the basics of spiritual interpretation of things, then how are we even going to practice? If you come to me and say, Maharaj, I want to learn how to meditate, teach me to meditate, and I say, okay, go sit and meditate, that's not going to help you. You came because you wanted to know how to do it. So once you've learned how to do it, then you don't keep coming to me and asking, Swami, how do I meditate? Once you know, then you just do it. And so in spiritual life, we need to know the basics of the mapping of reality from a spiritual standpoint, so that we know what to do, and so that we feel a new orientation. Right now, everyone has an orientation to reality, but the orientation which people have is based on complete ignorance, taking all of this for real, taking this as ultimate. There's nothing but what I can see. Sometimes you hear, I heard a lady on the radio in a call-in show. I listen to NPR when I'm driving in the car. And she said, why don't people just give up this superstition of religion? The world would be so much better without religion. We know what the world is. Science has told us what the world is, and just get on with it and get rid of all of these religious superstitions. But no, she doesn't know what reality is. It's evident from the very fact that she thinks that this is all that there is. A little bit of analysis, just a little bit of philosophical thinking shows you that this can't be all that there is. That's an extremely primitive state of mind, which thinks, it's very prevalent nowadays. Some of the greatest minds in the world hold that view, but it's a childish view to think that this world is everything. So everybody has an orientation to reality, but that orientation is built on ignorance. And so we study texts, we study the scriptures, we study subsidiary texts like the Panchadashi, in order to find out from a spiritual standpoint, what is the structure of reality? What is the structure of my experience? Why do I see the world the way that I see it? Why do I see myself the way that I see myself? How should I see myself? How should I see the world? What is my ideal relationship to the world and to everything within it? And so we study such books. But once you have the basic idea, then that's all that you need. Then what you want is reality. Then what you want is reality. So Swami Vivekananda spent much of his time in teaching, especially in the West, in trying to give a new interpretation of experience for people to orient them towards reality. And so his talks deal with the nature of the world, the nature of the self, the nature of the mind, because that is necessary in order to reorient ourselves to experience in a way which is spiritually beneficial. Once we've done that, then we have to go deeper by holding on to what we've learned and not go on analyzing it again and again. So that's what many people spend their whole life doing. They spend their whole life just rehashing and going into more and more subtle details of philosophy and so forth, and trying to get the details right and doubting this and doubting that. No, once you have conviction, then it's time for meditation. Then it's time to go deep. And so that's what Sri Ramakrishna says in the song, "Cherish my precious mother Shyama, tenderly within, O mind. May you and I," addressing his mind, "may you and I alone behold her, letting no one else intrude." So that is, close out the outer world and hold on to the Divine Mother, or hold on to the divine in whatever way that you approach the divine. Then he says, "A child spells out every word as he writes, but later on he writes fluently." So yes, when we're first learning writing, I am Ram. And thinking R-A-M, like that. Thinking of every letter. Or when you're learning the piano, okay, this finger on this key, this finger on that key, this finger on that key, this one on that black key, now my thumb, and back to this one, back to that one. You think of every finger and every key that it falls on. But later, coming back to writing, you start out writing like that when you're a child learning to write, and then later you just write "I am Ram" without even thinking about it. It just comes out. And so with playing the piano, once you've practiced and you've learned the keyboard and the use of the fingers on the keyboard, then you just play. You don't have to think about it. And so he's using that as an example of when you come to spiritual life, yes, that time we need to collect information. We need information. We need a correct mapping of experience in order to know what to do, how to proceed. But once we've done that, we don't need that. Then we want to move forward, not keep going over the map. You can. Some people love maps. I love maps. There's nothing wrong with loving maps. But if I want to go to, say, Australia, a country I've never been to, I want to go to Australia, and I get a map of Australia, and I spend my life just studying the map and getting different types of map, topological maps and everything, and I get so fascinated with maps that I lose interest in going to Australia. What is the use? No, the purpose for my getting the map originally was so that I would have some familiarity with the terrain before I got to Australia. But then I become so obsessed just with the joy of looking at the maps that I forget about the country itself. So then he goes on, "The goldsmith is up and doing while melting gold. As long as the gold hasn't melted, he works the bellows with one hand, moves the fan with the other, and blows through a pipe with his mouth. But the moment the gold melts and is poured into the mold, he is relieved of all anxiety." So yes, that's a beautiful example also, the goldsmith working so hard to get the gold to melt. So you have to build the fire to a very high a temperature, higher than if you just build a fire of wood or even coal and just let it burn. It doesn't get as hot as you need to melt gold. So you have to fan and blow and work the billows in order to give more and more oxygen so that the fire gets hotter and hotter, and then you get to the melting point of gold. So there's a lot of work to get the goldsmith, at least in the old days. Nowadays, it may not be so much work. Everything is automated. But in the old days, you had to go to so much work to get the gold to the melting point. But once it's melted and you pour it into the molds, then you just sit and wait. And so once we have done the work of figuring out spiritual life, enough so that I can practice, enough so that now I can go forward, then just let the mind go forward. Don't keep bringing up doubts and don't keep challenging the mind and keep making the mind doubt. In the Western tradition of philosophy, It's said, I've heard philosophers, Western philosophers say, that philosophy is an exercise where you never accept a proposition. You never rest as easy with a proposition. You're always questioning, always doubting, always analyzing everything. Well, that may be good for intellectual philosophy. If you want to be a great Western philosopher that can't be challenged by anyone, yeah, then that's fine. But if the purpose of your philosophy is the original purpose of the word philosophy, the love of wisdom, if it's wisdom that you want, then what does that have to do with wisdom? It has nothing to do with wisdom. You learn what you need to learn, and then you use it. Then put it into practice. Here in the song, Cherish My Precious Mother Shama, O my mind, Sri Ramakrishna often used to say that Ma Atyen Narami Yachi, Mother is and I am. I don't need to know anything else. What else do I need to know? The Divine Mother is and I am her child. That's all that I need to know. So once we've come to that, it's a great thing in spiritual life when we find that our inner spiritual life is beginning to simplify. In the beginning, we're trying, again, like the goldsmith, or the child trying to learn how to write. We're concerned with everything and how to do everything, what I should do, what I shouldn't do, and how I'm supposed to do it, and how I'm supposed to control the mind, and all of that. This seems like an impossible juggling act. But when we've advanced, then we find that spiritual life becomes simpler and simpler until it just comes down to a single longing for reality, and everything else becomes simplified into that. He continues, mere reading of the scriptures is not enough. A person cannot understand the true significance of the scriptures if he is attached to the world. Though with intense delight I learnt many poems and dramas, I have forgotten them all, entrapped in Krishna's love. So that's from a couplet. It must be from a song. Though with intense delight I learnt many poems and dramas, I have forgotten them all, entrapped in Krishna's love. Yes, if we have that, then nothing else is necessary. Let everything else fall away. So yes, when we don't have that, and again, we've talked about Vaidhi Bhakti and Prema Bhakti. That is bhakti which is followed when we have to follow injunctions. Do this, don't do that. So the beginnings of bhakti are like that. Do this, don't do that, because we don't know what to do, and we don't know the effects of things on us, and so we follow injunctions. Get up in the morning, salute God, think this when you first get up, go to the shrine, offer some incense, light a lamp, etc., and different things that we're enjoined to do in order to develop devotion. But once we have devotion, then those things fall away. Then everything that we do with devotion. So that's the idea. So again, it's not that the study of scriptures should be abandoned. And Swami Vivekananda said that the study of the scriptures in the ashramas, in the monasteries, was essential, because he said in the absence of learning, monastic systems degenerate. And so there is a place for study. But in the beginning, the study is for information. And after we have the information and we're following the spiritual life, then we read for further inspiration, not just for philosophical niceties and trying to figure out philosophical arguments and how to defeat other people, or how to doubt this and how to doubt that. Then we read for the sake of inspiration. So again, it's not against reading for inspiration, but the impulse is at that time, as we develop our spiritual life, is for moving towards God. He continues, Keshav enjoys the world and practices yoga as well. Living in the world, he directs his mind to God. And so here he's not criticizing Keshav. He's saying that that's a good thing. That Keshav wants to enjoy the world. Well, let him enjoy it. He has a desire for bhoga, but he also follows yoga. And so at the stage in which Keshav was, he's holding on to both. And so that's okay. Go forward with both. That's what most people need to do because they can't give up a bhoga. And so you introduce yoga so that you're not consumed by this. So if you introduce yoga, gradually over time, if you pursue it, that begins to take up more of your mental energy, and this takes up less. So that in time will come in this life or the next life when the very desire for bhoga goes, and you just want yoga. So Keshav came practically to that by the end of his life, through his last illness and everything. Sri Ramakrishna speaks about that. So a devotee described the convocation of Calcutta University, saying that the meeting looked like a forest of human heads. Master, the feeling of the divine is awakened in me when I see a great crowd of people. Had I seen that meeting, I should have been overwhelmed with spiritual fervor. So that's something that we see in Sri Ramakrishna, that he mentions that at different times, that whenever he saw a crowd of people, his spiritual consciousness was awakened. Many people, when they see a crowd of people, then they get nervous. But Sri Ramakrishna, seeing a mass of humanity, he had his spiritual consciousness awakened. It's something like, it's not the same, but there's a parallel. Like when we go to the ocean and look out on the ocean and see this vast expanse, so we find it highly inspiring. I've always, since my very earliest memory was of the ocean, and I've always been deeply inspired when I look out over the ocean, or when we go to the mountains and see the beautiful peaks, or we get to a mountain view where we can see peak after peak after peak. Holy Mother used to say that when one lives in a place where there's a grand vista, it uplifts the mind naturally. And so that's true. So with Sri Ramakrishna, it was not only such sights, but it was the sight of masses of human beings, the mass of the consciousness of all of these people brought together would inspire Sri Ramakrishna. So it shows, one of the things it shows was his deep love for humanity. Sri Ramakrishna prayed to the Divine Mother, "Don't make me a dry sadhu." He didn't want to be the old, dry, austere type that has nothing to do with people. He wanted to enjoy the company of devotees. He longed for the company of spiritually minded people. And even ordinary people, if he saw them in masses, he would be highly inspired. And so it was his love for humanity which brought him to incarnate itself, brought him into incarnation, and which held him in his incarnation. His mind naturally tended towards the absolute, naturally tended towards merging into Brahman, identity with Brahman. But by force of will, he kept his mind down so that he could commune with people and bring spirituality into the world. So it was that love for humanity which was at the root of his incarnation, the very cause of his incarnation, the cause of all of the tremendous work that he did. We don't often think of Sri Ramakrishna as a karma yogi, but he was one of the greatest karma yogis who ever lived, because everything that he did was for the sake of others. Again, his natural abode was to remain immersed in God with no consciousness of the outer world. But by force, he held his mind down in order to share that same vision of God to human beings. And so it was that love which was at the root of his incarnation. So we've come to the end of a chapter, and so I'm going to stop rather than crossing into a new chapter and just getting one or two paragraphs in. So we'll stop a little early. And anyway, nowadays I've been thinking that 50 minutes is probably a better length for a class and a lecture than an hour anyway, except when there's something that can't be finished within that amount of time. So I'll give announcements, and at the end of the announcements, if there are any questions, I'll answer those. Otherwise, we'll close. So 4 announcements. The same as before, we'll have the Sunday lecture at 11 o'clock, live streamed. And on Tuesday, we'll have the Gita class at 7:30 p.m., live streamed. And next week, same time, same station, we will have the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna class, 11 o'clock next Thursday. And we'll continue that way surely through the end of July. In August, we may take a break, but at least through July, we'll continue that way without any interruptions expected. One other announcement that I've been making, and that is our cooperation with Seva International, a Hindu service organization which has branches around the world, but a very active chapter here in Houston. And it is serving the people here in Houston, those who are hurting for food. Houston, as you know, has been hit very hard by the economic downturn, not just by the disease itself, but especially by the economic downturn. And so many people are out of work. The oil industry and all of the subsidiary industries are hurting. And so many people are having a hard time putting food on the table. So in concert with Seva International, we, the Vedanta Society, are collecting food to give in their food drive. But there are certain foodstuffs that they want, and so only those things should be donated. A list has been sent out. If you didn't get it, you can contact us here at the center or one of our close devotees who would have the list also to find out what food stuffs to bring for them. And you can bring it here to the center and we will deliver it to Seva. Or if you want to give a donation, if you write a check, put in the memo line for Seva or for the food drive, just something that indicates that it's for this food drive, whatever it be. Or you can go to our website and click on donation, and you can give a donation through PayPal, where there is a place where you can specify that this is for the food drive. And then that we will give. All of it goes to Seva, and they use all of it for helping people. They don't take out administrative expenses, unlike most public charities. So, and they also are collecting PPE, personal protective equipment like masks and so forth. But if you want to participate in that, you have to find out from them exactly what they want, because they are distributing face masks to people, but they have specific instructions on how to make them, what type it is that they want. And so if you want to do something like that, if you want to make face masks, then they would be very appreciative, but you need to contact them or contact Swapna Chaudhary, whose phone number, our devotee Swapna, whose phone number you can find on our website under contacts, and find out how to make them. So with that, I'll close. Are there any questions, Surenji? No questions, so I'll close with a chant. Om Niranjanam Nityam Anantarupam Bhaktanukampa Dhrita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha.
There is one question that came later just now.
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I won't take it now, but I'd like to hear what it is.
I said that David Miller, why there would be spiritual arousal in Ramakrishna when he sees mass of people